give things their proper weight. Hi, I'm Nick. This is 10 Minutes with Nick. And the reason I bring this up is because on social media everywhere, you see everybody have an opinion. Everybody has an opinion. And they all, at some point, are right, wrong, indifferent, whatever. And it drives you nuts when you see some of these opinions because they are just so... They seem like they're pulled out of thin air. These days, it's more important than ever to learn how to properly weigh and measure opinions, how much you should consider an opinion. Especially because people have strong opinions on how you should weigh opinions. If you are Fox News, you have a tendency to sort of discredit certain scientists over others. You make the case that you should look at this evidence differently than others. I'm going to stay away from politics. It's never a good way to go. Always ends up being a problem. I'm going to end up canceled by Rachel Maddow, and I don't even have a big platform. I don't have any platform. I have 40 people listening to me. I do appreciate you, though, if you do listen. I'm going to focus on something that I know very well, which is the law. And by very well, I mean I know it relatively well. But I speak about it very confidently. When we talk about weighing opinions, the weight of an opinion means just how credible is the opinion. And most everything we deal with is opinion. Now, some things are fact, and facts should be given, they should just be used and believed. Facts are what you use to form opinions. Okay. If 2 plus 2 equals 4, and I have 2 apples, and I buy 2 apples from you, I can safely assume that I now have 4 apples. The underlying fact is 2 plus 2 equals 4. My opinion or theory or hypothesis is that I now have 4 apples. Basic counting, we can confirm that I indeed do have 4 apples. I don't have a degree in mathematics, but you can consider my opinion on the number of apples I have credible. In a court of law, it would be very hard to disprove my opinion. Okay. And the method we use to discredit opinions is either the process in a deposition where we ask questions, or in open court, where it's essentially the same, but slightly more theatrical. In a courtroom, I have objections I can use, and in a courtroom, I, as the direct examiner, I can sort of get the person whose opinion we're trying to weigh to tell their story and why they should be believed. And on cross, I can force them into yes or no questions that can make them appear less credible or more credible, depending on if I want that. So how does that apply to real life? Well, it applies to real life because you should, in your head, work those same processes, work the process of direct examination and cross-examination as you weigh different people's opinions. Let's stray into the realm of religion, because obviously religion is so much less controversial than politics. I'll stick to the religion I know, which is Christianity. I will not wander into the field of Islam. I will not wander into the field of Judaism. I have no credibility in those fields, none whatsoever. Okay. So let's say you're trying to decipher what a passage in the Bible means. First things first, you would do well to read the passage of the Bible. The passage of the Bible is the facts of the case that you're trying to build an opinion around. Let's just take a random passage. We'll go Romans 2:31 in the King James Version says, "Without understanding, covenant breakers, without natural affection, implacable, unmerciful." That's told us pretty much nothing. That's a nothing burger of a passage, so it was a poor choice. This is a 10-minute podcast is not really the best place to decipher opinions, but we're using it as the basic facts, the basic data of what we're trying to build here. Let's say we're trying to build an opinion out of this passage. Okay, so we know what the text says. Let's go to a different passage. Without understanding, covenant breakers, without natural affection, implacable, unmerciful, now going to verse 32, who knowing the judgment of God, that they which commit such things are worthy of death, not only do the same, but have pleasure in them that do them. Okay, you can read that, and if you're confused, you should be. That's a very weird passage, and it's completely out of context. But that's good. We know what we don't know. We don't know what that passage means. We only know what the passage says. We only know what the passage says in the King James Version because I'm not going to do additional research. I only have so much time in this podcast. So how do we go about learning? Well, we look for additional sources. We look for people who have opinions about that passage. Lots of people you could go to. You can go to your pastor. I would advise that as a way to start because that's their whole shtick. They're trained, or hopefully they have some experience in interpreting passages of the Bible. Or you can look up other experts. A guy on Instagram, Dan McClellan, he is a Bible scholar, meaning that he spent a lot of time researching. So between your pastor and Dan McClellan, let's say they have conflicting opinions. Now you're into your, okay, how do I weigh these opinions against each other? It depends. It truly depends. I don't know your pastor's academic background. Pastor of my home church has a PhD in ethics, actually. It's a PhD in ethics. But part of that PhD has been deep rhetorical study of the Bible. Dan McClellan has several graduate degrees. I believe at least one of them is a PhD. So you look at the two of them and you say to yourself, okay, if they both have PhDs, then we can look at the types of things they do. Dan McClellan tends to have a rigorous, data-driven, what he calls a data-driven analysis of the Bible. Your local pastor may not have a rigorous, data-driven sense of the Bible. And again, it comes down to a question of how you weigh each opinion against the other. And this is where things start to get tricky, because now you have two conflicting opinions, and they both seem to be fairly credible. But that's okay, because they're both opinions. Now, granted, don't step into the ring with a guy like Dan McClellan. I don't advise it. Why? Not because he's mean. He's certainly not. He's actually, in terms of an academic, he's certainly very good at what he does. And what he does is study the Bible, and not only study the Bible, but communicate what he's learned. He's very effective at that. I hope your pastor is as well. But that leads us to the problem of where we get on social media. Nobody weighs opinions. They just parrot them. If you listen to what Dan McClellan says and you disagree with him, it's okay. If you listen to your pastor and you disagree with what your pastor says, that's also okay. But if you're going to disagree with somebody and believe somebody else, you can't just parrot these things back. You have to actually have done some thinking about it. That's the point. If you're going to develop an opinion, you need to actually think about that opinion. And a lot of that is weighing credible sources against the other. And not because you need to come to a conclusion that one of them is 100% right and one of them is 100% wrong. It's just a matter of critically thinking about your own beliefs and opinions. Nobody's disagreeing about what the text of something says. Nobody's disagreeing that 2 + 2 doesn't equal 4. The disagreement comes down to how you interpret those facts and what lens you use to interpret those facts and develop your hypothesis or opinions from that. This is a very wide-ranging and complicated topic, and quite honestly, this is why opinions should not be really given on social media. It's why Twitter is so bad, because you don't have the room to actually have this sort of nuanced debate about how you're going to weigh these sources. I mean, if you go to NFL Twitter, you can see people using facts, cherry-picking facts to create an argument, and then essentially acting like a pigeon and just knocking the board pieces over and crapping on the board. I just butchered that phrase. The phrase is, don't play chess with a pigeon, because no matter if you're winning or losing, they'll just knock the pieces over and shit on the board and strut around like they've won. That's the fundamental truth of the matter. If you're going to have an opinion on something and it's based on sources at least have thought about the credibility of those sources before you open your mouth. I'm over my time. Hope that made sense. It probably didn't. That's okay. I'm Nick. This is 10 Minutes with Nick. Have a great day.